questions. And like I said, it's always scenario based. And the essence of this is to help our PMP prospective candidates to get ready for their exams. And today we're going to look at just 10 questions. And these questions are drawn from both predictive and agile project management methodologies. I want you to pay attention as we go on today. And the essence of this is to boost your confidence level and to get you ready for your PMP exam. Yes. So the first thing we're going to look at today is question number 1. And question number 1 is saying, during the execution phase of a software development project, the project manager identifies a critical defect that would significantly impact the project schedule. All right. So the project manager consults with the key stakeholders and proposes a change request to address the defect. What should the project manager do next? All right. So the project manager consults with the key stakeholders and proposes a change request to address the defect. What should the project manager do next? Then the first option there is, option A that says analyze the impact of the change request and document it in a change control form. All right. So the second thing there, the first option there is a reasonable option, because we want to make sure that as much as possible we have proper documentation of everything that happens in our project. If there are issues in the project, we want to be able to document them so that next time we'll be able to, whenever we come across such similar problems in subsequent projects in the future, we want to be able to refer back to our knowledge, catalog of problems that we've encountered in the past, and then see how we were able to tackle them, and then in a kind of leverage on the previous knowledge. So that is what we're actually talking about here. So analyzing the impact of the change request and documenting it in a change control form is actually in line. So let's look at other option. Then implement the change requests immediately without further analysis. No, you can't just implement. Analysis is very important. You don't want to make mistakes. You will agree with me. So we want to make sure that we kind of do proper analysis before, like we said, proper assessment of the situation of the change or the nature of the change you want to make. Okay, so that is B. So B might not be the right option. Then C said reject the change request to avoid scope creep. All right, so, and going back, he said during the execution phase of the software, the project manager identified a critical defect that will significantly impact the project schedule. All right, so the project manager consults with the key stakeholders and proposes a change request to address the defect. So now in option C, it's talking about reject the change request to avoid scope creep. No, I think it would be better to analyze. You need to have a proper understanding of the change request that is coming before you reject. You don't just go ahead and just reject. If you are rejecting, that means you're not open to changes. So we want to be, as much as possible, we want to be open to changes if it's a reasonable one that can actually impact the project positively. We want to take advantage of such changes, so we don't just reject. And when we talk about scope creep means you going outside your scope. All right, so the scope has been baselined and defined. It has been defined and baselined. All right, it has been validated, it has been signed, and it's been agreed by all the stakeholders that is going to be the boundary of our scope. All right, so the only reason that will make us to kind of expand our scope or kind of reduce our scope is going to be when it's going to be whatever reason. If we're going to do that at all, it's going to be a kind of base. It's going to be you're going to meet the agreement of all the stakeholders to come together and say, okay, now with reasonable, a kind of with a very good reason, right? We can say that, okay, we need to reduce the scope or we need to expand the scope. But expanding the scope without the general agreement of stakeholders, what we call the scope creep. For instance, somebody is telling you to do something within a defined scope, and you want to impress the person, and you're going beyond the agreed scope. So that is called scope creep. All right. So the C might not be the right option here. And option D said you escalate the change request to senior management for a decision. Okay, so you're having a problem on site. Instead of solving it on site as a project manager, you want to escalate the problem. Okay, it simply means that you are you're sending a signal to the senior management, and the signal is that you're telling them that you're not too competent to be the project manager. So as much as possible, you as a project manager want to be able to put every problem on ground in check. Then if it's not within your authority and operation, then it will be right for you to escalate it to the senior management. But in this case, it's within your power. So you need to do an analysis. Okay, so I think option option A should be the right option, where you will need to analyze the impact of the change request and document it in a change control form. So let's see what the option is. Yes, option A is the right option. And I want to believe you performed very well. Yes. So we're going to head on to the next question. And the next thing in line is going to be question 2. So let's head up to question 2. Now, question 2 this morning is telling us that a project manager is leading a construction project where multiple teams are working simultaneously on different components of the project. Right, so many teams working together on the same different components of the project, and the project manager notices that there's a lack of coordination and communication between the teams, okay, resulting in delays and rework. Okay, and what should the project manager do to address this issue? Okay, so communication is a very major factor in project management, in operations management, okay, in the running of any organization. Communication is key. So if there is no proper communication, there's going to be a lot of issues. And if you find issues in organizations today and you critically look at these issues, you'll discover that these are actually because of lack of proper communication. So as much as possible, that is why we discover that communication is one of the major subsidiary plans we have in the project management plan. The first option there, since there is no proper communication, the basic thing is that there's no coordination and there is no proper communication. Okay, so what should the project manager do to address this issue? Number 1, option A says, assign additional team members to each team to improve productivity. Assign additional team members to each team to improve productivity. Okay, assigning is not really the problem now. We're talking of communication and coordination. Then option B says, implement a communication plan and hold regular coordination meeting with all team leads. Yes, it's very important to hold a regular meeting, okay, so that everybody can be on the same page in respect to, the status of the project, the challenges coming up on the project, and then carrying all stakeholders along. So communication is very important. B looks quite promising. And then let's look at other options. Replace team leads who are responsible for the lack of coordination. You can do better than that. You can build them. You can make them understand what they need to know. And that can be by holding regular meetings and then trying to do the right thing. Then option D says, increase the project budget to accommodate the additional effort required. We're not talking about budget here. We're talking about communication. So looking at it, I think the most promising option here should be option B. So let's look at the option. Yeah, option B is the right option. Yes. And I appreciate your tenacity, I appreciate your resilience, and I appreciate the fact that you really want to write your PMP. And I'm hoping that as you go in this spirit, you're going to come out in flying colors. You're going to come out successfully in your PMP. Yeah, so the next thing now we're going to do is to go straight to question number 3. And question number 3 says, a project manager is leading a high stakes projects with tight deadline. Tight deadline, it means that you have to meet the deadline. So during the project execution, the project manager observes that one of the team members is consistently missing deadlines and delivering poor quality work. Project manager discusses the issue with the team member, but there is no improvement. What should the project manager do next? And it has to do with team management also. Okay, now you see that in this project, we just have to meet up with the deadline. But then there's a team member that actually misses most of his work. He's not consistent with, meeting up with time. And then the project manager discusses the issue with the team member, but there is no improvement. What should the project manager do next? Assign more work to the team member to improve their productivity. Already there's an issue with the team member, so you can't add more. If you're assigning too many work to the team member, there might be confusion. So you want to make sure that you actually address the root of the issue. Then B is saying, document the performance issue and escalate it to the functional manager. Yes, okay, that looks quite promising. document the performance issue and escalate it to the functional manager. We have different types of organization, okay, and structures. All right, so we have the functional organization, we have the matrix organization, we have the projectized organization, all right, organizational structures. Okay, so now in the case of a functional kind of organizational structure, it's one where you have different functional managers. Maybe you have the head of the account, you have the head of the IT department, you have the head of project, you have the head of mechanical department and all that. So maybe you have a project where you need different personnel from all these functional departments. Okay, so now since you have staff, you have personnel from all these functional departments, you are the one managing them. So you're seeing this person in this question as one of the persons from one of the functional departments, and you've actually talked to the person, but yet the person is not actually yielding a positive result. So the right thing for you to do is to go to the head of the department. So the functional manager is the head of the department. You have to let him know what is happening. Possibly you have to see if he needs to get you a better kind of resource, human resource for that particular assignment. Okay, but he needs to be in the picture and know that you're having a challenge with this particular, team member. So that's just it. So it's a very good option B. But let's see other option. There could be better option. Option C say remove the team member from the project immediately. No, we don't do that. We have processes to follow. You have to obey, organizational process. Organizational procedures has to be, as a professional, you need to obey the procedures. So it's very important you follow the procedures. Then also D said offer additional training and support to the team member. That's a very good option also. But then you have actually a kind of talk to the team member on several occasions and all that, so it's not an issue of training now. I think this is kind of an issue of lapses on the part of the team member. So the right option there should be option B. Yes, option B is the right option. How did you do? I hope you performed well. Just hang on there, keep moving on, you're doing well. And I'm very sure that in your PMP, you're going to blast it. Yes, I wish you all the best. So the next thing we're going to do is to head on to question number 4. Question number 4 says, project manager is working on a project, okay, that involves significant procurement activities. During the procurement process, the project manager receives multiple proposals from vendors. What should the project manager do? Next is the keyword, next. Now, multiple proposals. Now, this is actually from procurement management. All right, normally when you are about to conduct procurement, there will be so many proposals from so many vendors. Yes, what do? You need to kind of analyze. There are criteria, okay? There are criteria you need to analyze, and based on those criteria, then you have to go through the selection process because you want to get the best vendor out of them. So let's look at the option A. Option A says, select the vendor with the lowest price to save project cost. Yes, you may select the vendor with the lowest price, but the vendor may not deliver. So it's not just the lowest price. You want a vendor that will be reliable. You want a vendor with huge, high level of experience. You want a vendor that you can actually trust. So it's not just the lowest price. So let's look at other options. That's also a good option. It's one of the criteria, but then let's look at others. There could be evaluate the proposals based on predefined criteria. That's a very good one. And select the vendor that best meets the project requirements. So when we talk about predefined criteria, you want to select vendors. What do? You have to map out like a table, like a matrix. Then you have number 1, you have what your first criteria is that the lowest price, reasonable price. The next criteria is reliable, somebody you can trust. Then the next one is somebody who can actually stand in, who can be effective, okay? Then you want to make sure that this person has the financial capacity to actually handle the contract. Okay, then you have to look at the kind of the past experience of that particular person or that particular vendor, and to know if the person has the capacity to handle this project. So these are the criteria. So you have to look at all this, evaluate the proposal based on predefined criteria, and select the vendor that best meets the project requirement. That looks very promising. But let's look at other options before we come back to that, if that's the best. Option C says reject all proposals and restart the procurement process. No, there has to be a kind of an evaluation of, no matter the bulk of the vendors you have, just do an evaluation. So C might not be the right option there. D said engage in negotiation with the vendors to obtain better offers. Okay, so engage in negotiation with the vendors to obtain better offers. Well, there is a procurement process, okay, and you're already in the process, and this process requires you to kind of evaluate your vendors to know the right vendors. Okay, so I want to go with option B there. Option B looks more promising, so let's see what the right option is. Option B, yes. How did you do? I know you did well. And also, while we're moving on, please, it's actually an assessment test, and it's meant to assess your knowledge gap. If everything is strange to you, it means that you have a wide range of knowledge gap that you need to cover up. So what it requires of you is to go back again and sit back and study so you can be able to cover up your knowledge gaps. Yes. So the next thing we have here is question number 5. Question number 5. Now, question number 5 says a project manager is leading a complex infrastructure project with a distributed team. All right, so the project manager notices that the team members have different interpretations of the project requirement, that's the project scope, all right, resulting in inconsistencies in their deliverables. What should the project manager do to address this issue? Okay, so it's a complex infrastructure project with a distributed team. The teams are not co-located. All right, we have what we call the co-located teams that are located at the same place, but in this case it's a distributed team, so they are not co-located. Okay, now said, and this results to poor interpretation of the project requirement. All right, and because of this, the outcome of the project is not in line, it's not consistent. All right, it's not consistent with the scope, with the requirements. So what should the project manager do? Now, option A says implement a change management process to address the inconsistencies. Okay, so I think this has to do with you need to analyze your team and understand your team. Okay, so implementing a change management process to address the inconsistencies. The change management process is already built into the process. All right, and a change management process comes when maybe your operation is not going in line with expectation. Okay, so in this case we are talking about distributed teams, all right, having poor understanding of the requirements, and because of this they're producing deliverables that are not consistent with requirement. So implementing a change management process to address the inconsistencies might not be the right option here. Then B say conduct a requirement analysis workshop with the team members to clarify the project requirements. So that sounds promising because you want to make sure that the team actually clearly understands what the requirement of this project is. So if you're conducting a requirement analysis workshop with the team members, so you want to really understand what their problem is. You're analyzing their problems. You want to know why is it that they're not able to understand what we need in this project. Then with that also, you'll be able to drive down the vision to them, let them understand and make it very clear to them. The B looks quite promising. Let's look at other options. Increase the frequency of project status meetings to monitor the team's progress. That's a very good option also. All right, but in this case we have a challenge. We need to root it from the board. That is why we need to do an analysis of what the problem is, understand the problem of the people, and know how to we can better make them kind of clarify the concept and the requirements to the team. Then assign additional resources to the project to improve productivity. No, we're not talking about resource assignments here. We're talking about clarifying the requirements. So I'm looking at option B there as the right option. So let's see what the right option is. Option B is the right option. How did you do? I believe you performed well. Just keep going, you're doing well. And I want to assure you that your future is actually very bright. And I'm hoping that very soon you're going to be the next project management professional. Yes, so the next thing we have here is question number 6. And I want to let you know that you're doing well. Hang on there and keep pushing and keep moving. If you have any lapses, fall back to your book and just study on. And I want to let you know that you're going to come out successful in your PMP exam. Now we look at question number 6. Question number 6 is the next thing we have there. And he said a project manager is working on an international project with team members from different cultures. All right. So the project manager notices that there are conflicts arising due to differences in work style and communication approaches. What should the project manager do to manage this conflict effectively? All right. We have conflicts arising, arising due to difference in work styles and communication. Now, these are people from different countries, different cultures, different understanding and all that. Okay, so now we see conflicts, due to these differences. Okay, so what should you do? All right, the first one, encourage team members to conform to a single work style and communication approach. All right, a single work style and communication approach. There has to be a dynamic communication approach, because communication needs to be tailored. There's what we call tailoring in communication. So you have to tailor your communication based on people's culture, people's differences and all that. So it might not be the same work style or same communication approach in this case. So that might not be the right option. B says ignore the conflicts and let the team members resolve them on their own. Okay, ignore the conflicts and let them. No, so that might not be the right option. If you have conflicts in your project as a project manager, as much as possible and as quick as possible, it will be highly advisable that such conflicts are addressed immediately without wasting time, please. Then option C says facilitate open communication and promote understanding of different cultural perspectives. That's a very, very wonderful one, and I think that should be the right option. Facilitating open communication, all right, where everybody can communicate and where everybody can understand and promote understanding of different cultural perspectives. So we want to understand, India. We want to know how the Indians, see this perspective professionally. We want to know how the Hindus see this in professionally. We want to know how the Chinese, look at this. We want to understand. We want to build our culture. Okay, the more you understand people's culture, the more you're able to flow. Okay, so I think I'm looking at that as the right option. Then D, saying replace team members who are involved in conflict. No, we don't replace them. We want to see how we can actually work. Conflict is part of the team progress. It's part of it. We talked about the progress of the team. So conflict is one. Storming is one of the basic things you must expect from every team. There is no team without conflict. So conflict is part of it. All right, so the right option here should be option C. Option C is the right option. So how do you do it? I believe you performed well. So the next thing we have here is question number 7. Question number 7. And question number 7 said a project manager is working on a project that involves multiple stakeholders with conflicting interests. It's similar to what we did last question. And the project manager is struggling to get consensus on important project decisions. What should the project manager do to resolve this conflict? Okay, so what should you do to resolve this conflict? Make the project decision independently to avoid delays. Make the project decision independently to avoid delays. Okay, and conduct a stakeholder analysis to identify their interests and find common ground. Okay, the first one is make the project decisions independently to avoid delays. No, you don't make project decisions independently. You want to make sure that as much as possible, everything is done together. All right. So, and option B says conduct a stakeholder analysis to identify their interest and find common ground. That's a very good option also. Okay, you have to do a stakeholder analysis. That helps you to understand your stakeholders very well. Okay, when you have a better understanding of your stakeholder, then you should be able to know how to relate with them, how to deal with all your stakeholders. But I'm going to come back to explain that. That looks quite promising. Option C says exclude stakeholders with conflicting interests from project discussion. One major principle in project management is this: you cannot exclude your stakeholders. no matter how unbearable, how intolerable, how difficult they are, you have to figure out a principle and a way to deal with them. They are part of your project. You don't have to exclude them. If you exclude them, you're going to have issues in your project. So that is not the right option. So option D says seek guidance from the project sponsor to resolve the conflict. Yes, it is the responsibility, it is your responsibility as a project manager to resolve the conflict. Okay, and that is why you're employed as a project manager, and the organization is holding their hands and they are watching you. I don't want to see you apply your skill, your professional skills in dealing with issues in your project. So you don't want to push those problems. You don't want to push your responsibilities. You don't want to bog your project sponsor with what you are supposed to do. Okay, so that doesn't show responsibility. So I don't think that is the right option. So I'm looking at option B as the right option, to conduct a stakeholder analysis. Analyze your stakeholders. Which ones are difficult, which ones are easy to work with, what is their level of interest, how can they impact the project, and then if they are of high interest in the project, see how you can pay close attention to them, show them what they need to know and everything. So option B should be the right option. Let's see what the option is. Option B is the right option. And how did you do? I believe you performed well. I wish you all the best in your PMP exam. I want to let you know this is not just it's not a big deal. Yes, there are a lot of people that have listened to the exam and they've passed, and I don't think you're an exception. You also can do it. So I'm wishing you all the best in your PMP exam. Now, that takes us to question number 8. You're doing very well. We just have 3 more questions to go in this section. So question number 8 now is where we are, and it's saying the project manager is leading a project with a fixed budget and tight timeline. It's talking about schedule again. The budget is fixed. It means it's baselined. You cannot add more money. Okay, so, and the timeline is tight. You cannot extend the time. That's what it means. So during the execution, the project manager identifies additional requirements that were not initially included in the project scope. Okay, what should the project manager do? Now, if you're adding something to the project scope, it means you're adding to the timeline and you're adding to the budgets. An increment in the scope means an increment in the time and also in the budgets. So they want to know how you can actually handle this issue. Okay, you discover something that was not included in the scope. What should you do? Should you just go ahead and just add it? No. I told you I know I have mentioned it severally, that the only way you can add to a scope has to be it has to be in agreement with the stakeholders, the key stakeholders. All right, there has to be a general agreement. So you have to bring it to the board. First, there has to be a change request. All right, you raise a change request and you do an analysis of the change to kind of bring out the picture of the benefits of the change you want to make. Then you present it to stakeholders, the change control board and all that. Let them know about that, and then let them see reasons. So they will look at it and feel, okay, I think this is something we cannot do without. This is an indispensable aspect of this project, and I feel we can still make a change. At the end of the whole thing, they can come together and come to an agreement. So let's look at the options. A says ignore the additional requirements to avoid scope creep. You can ignore, yes, but the question said is the project manager to identify additional requirements that were not initially included in the project scope. But these are requirements. All right, so it's an omission. Okay, so let's see. You have to include, but you have to go through a process. Then B says include the additional requirement without considering the impact on budget and timeline. No, you have to, like I said, you have to do analysis. How is it going to affect let them know that it's going to affect it this way, but let them see the benefits of the requirements. Then option C says assess the impact of the additional requirement. That's a very good one. That's the first thing you do. Okay, you have to assess the impact. How is it going to affect my project? That's the first thing. And you have to do that. You don't need to consult anybody to do that. You are the project manager, so you have to go ahead and do an assessment of the requirement first on the project constraints and involve the change control board if necessary. All right, so you have to involve the change control board. Let them know that this is what is happening. Now let's look at option D. Option D says postpone the project until additional budget and time can be allocated. No, it's not the right option. Okay, it's not the right option. There's a timeline to your project. You're postponing your project for just, some kind of reason may not be reasonable enough. Okay, so option C is quite promising. It's the principle. Okay, and this is the perform integrated change control principle. So the principle is that you have to assess the impact of the additional requirements on the project constraint and involve the change control board. I want to go with option C. Option C is the right option. Yes. How did you do? I believe you performed well. Now we have just 2 more questions to wrap up this session. Yes, and just hang on there, you're doing well. And I want to say that if you like this question and it's actually useful to you as you prepare for your PMP and CUPM exam, you can just do well to hit the like button. Okay, you're going to hit the like button and subscribe. Just look down at the bottom tab, you're going to see the subscribe button, just hit it. And then also, if you have any question or you want to contact me in any way for any question, you can just go down to the comment box. All right, just drop your questions there. Yes, and I'm going to reach out to you. Yes, so we have 2 more questions to go on this. And the next thing we have here now is going to be question number 9. Question number 9 says, a project manager is leading a software development project. Okay, a software development project, and the project is currently in the testing phase, and several defects have been identified. The project manager decides to address the defects based on their priority and severity. Okay, so what technique is the project manager using? So the project manager is currently in the testing phase, and several defects have been identified. And the project manager decides to address the defect based on their priority and severity. Okay. What technique is the project manager using? Now, there's a defect. Okay, so the first thing he did is to prioritize the defects. How did he know about that? He did an evaluation. He actually evaluated to know, the severity of these defects. So when we talk about severity, how severe it is and needs to be dealt with, then he prioritizes them. Now the question is, what technique is the project manager using? Risk assessment technique. Okay, so this is not risk assessment. In the risk assessment, you talk about the qualitative risk assessment and the quantitative risk assessment. Okay, so, but in this case, now we're looking at a defect here, all right? There's already a defect. I want to see how to correct them. Quality control, yes, quality control is a very good one. It's process control. Then change control. Okay, change control is perform integrated change control, so it's not really the option there. Issue tracking. It's not an issue tracking. Yes, it's not an issue tracking. And issue tracking has to do with tracking to know where the problem is coming from, or an analysis of the root cause of a problem. But in this case, we're looking at, we have the deliverable. I want to look at the defects in the deliverable. So that has to do with quality control. We're checking our quality. We want to know how what we have done is. The quality of what we have done, is it up to standard? Is it in line with customer requirements or client's requirements? So that's what we're talking about here. And I think the right option there is option B, quality control. Yeah, option B is quality control. How did you do? I believe you performed well, yes. And I'm wishing you all the best in your PMP exam as you pay attention to all this. I'm wishing you all the best. Keep moving on. You're doing well. I'm very sure that this exam is not going to be a big deal for you. You're going to make it. You're going to come out successful. And we've gone this far in this session. There's just 1 question remaining. And like I said, you can hit the like button and join me. The last question there is question 10, and it says a project manager is managing a construction project with multiple subcontractors. One of the subcontractors is consistently behind schedule and impacting the overall project timeline. What should the project manager do to address this issue? Terminate the contract with the subcontractor? No. Assign additional resources to the subcontractor to speed up their work? Okay. Hold a meeting with the subcontractor to discuss the performance issues. what should the project manager do to address this issue? Now you have multiple contractors, many of them, from maybe different companies, so they're coming together, to kind of handle a particular project. So don't forget, you have the project. The project has a defined timeline, budget, and scope and everything. And for the project to meet the baseline, meet the timeline, all the contractors or partner organizations involved in the project will have to work in line with the timeline. Okay, but in this case, find out that there is setback. Some of them are not really meeting up. One of the subcontractors is consistently behind schedule and impacting the overall project timeline. What should the project manager do to address this issue? Terminate the contract with the subcontractor immediately. That might not be even just terminate the contract. There should be a better option. Assign additional resources to the subcontractor to speed up their work. Okay, that could be the kind of that's what we call the project crashing. It could be an option also, but let's look at other options. Hold a meeting with the subcontractor to discuss the performance issues and find a resolution. That should be a very good one. All right, communication is very important. You hold a meeting with the subcontractor and then discuss this issue and then find a better way. You just need to get better. You cannot continue this way. I think that should be a very more promising option, but let's look at option D. Could be a better option. So option B says extend the project timeline to accommodate the delays caused by the subcontractor. Okay. If you look at the question, you see that it's already baseline. Okay, and you can't just extend it. You can't just extend. You don't have the liberty of to extend the timeline. As much as possible, you want to make sure you're running with your plans. So it's not the right option. So I think the right option there is to hold a meeting with the subcontractor and discuss the performance issues and find a resolution. Option C. Yeah, option C is the right option. Yes, I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your staying and hanging on till this time. And I want to let you know that for you to be able to pass your exam, all you need to do is to practice. Okay, you need to go through questions from the predictive project management methodology, the agile project management methodology. You need to go through your Pinball Guide 6, from cover to cover. You need to go through your Pinball Guide 7, cover to cover. You need to go through your agile practice guide. It's very important to go through all that to help you, to keep up to speed in preparation for your PMP exam. Yes, and for me here, I'm actually wishing you all the best. And if you ask me, I want to let you know that it's not going to be a big deal for you because I know you can do it. There are many out there who have their PMPs. They went through, the process you're going through right now, and they gave it their best, and they went into the exam and wrote and came out successfully. And yours is not going to be a different option. Yours is not going to be an exception. You're going to go into the exam and you're going to write and come out well. But I would always advise that you make sure you cover up your knowledge gaps. Okay, look at areas where things are sounding too strange for you, the gray areas, and then you make sure you make out time to study very well. And for those of you who have very tight schedule, that doesn't mean that you can't write a PMP. All you need to do, your study plan is going to be based on how tight your daily schedule is. Okay, if you're too tight or too busy person, okay, you can study in the night, you can make out time. It's something very worthwhile. Whatever is worth doing is worth doing well. So you can actually study in the night. Okay, even if it's just 2 hours a day, you can give it like a 6 month spread, 2 hours a day, and before you know what's happening, you've covered ground. But for those of you who have enough, just 3 months is just okay for you to study. Study your Pinball Guide, your Pinball Guide 6 and 7, your project, your Agile Practice Guide, with Amorphy and the rest of them. Go through practice videos like this, and before you know what's happening, your confidence level will be up to speed, to be able to write your exam. So I wish you the best. Okay, and also see you in the next class. Yes. Once again, my name is Michael Valley. I'm your PMP coach, your PMP instructor, and it's been nice, talking to you, and I hope to see you in the next class.
Thank you.